When you think of the words active and passive, what comes to mind? The word active probably reminds you of outdoor activities or an exercise. An active person is energetic, involved. The word passive, on the other hand, probably reminds you of someone who avoids conflict and is slow to take action. In writing, active voice keeps your sentences energetic and exciting, while passive voice slows them down. Too many passive sentences make a text slow and boring. Consider this example. In contrast, Antigone's actions are interpreted by Mary Dietz as an affirmation of the importance of politics over family. Antigone is established by Dietz's argument as a model for citizenship with a feminist face and an advocate for religious and civil customs. In Dietz's opinion, political reform rather than maternal awareness must be devoted to by modern feminists. As opposed to this one. The first paragraph that I just read is written almost entirely in passive voice. And as I read it, you probably noticed that the sentences were tedious. Using active voice, on the other hand, would make the paragraph a little more interesting and engaging. Let's read this one. In contrast, Mary Dietz interprets Antigone's actions as an affirmation of the importance of politics over family. Dietz's argument establishes Antigone as a model for citizenship with a feminist face and an advocate for religious and civil customs. In Dietz's opinion, modern feminists must devote themselves to political reform rather than maternal awareness. While active voice can improve your writing, using only active voice would sound repetitive and aggressive. Learning to find a good balance of active and passive voice will help you refine your writing skills and help you to communicate your ideas better as well. This lesson will teach you how to use both active and passive voice. When a sentence uses active voice, the subject is performing an action. Here's an example. The basset hound relaxed next to her owner on the couch. In this sentence, the subject, basset hound, is performing the action, which in this case, doing the relaxing. So this sentence is considered active. Active voice makes your writing more energetic. Consider the following examples. After 32 long miles, a lifelong goal was accomplished by Harmon and Whitney. After 32 long miles, Harmon and Whitney accomplished a lifelong goal. Which sentence seems more exciting, alive? The second sentence uses active voice to show the subject's performing an action. It has more energy than the first one, which is written in passive voice. Read the following three sentences. See if you can determine active or passive voice in each. All right, let's look at the first one. Our entire road was paved by the crew last week. In this one, the verb is paved. Now, the question is, who did the paving? It wasn't the road that did the paving, and yet that is the subject, the road. It was the crew that did the paving, and the crew is not the subject of the sentence. Therefore, it is written in passive voice. How about the next one? The kitchen will be cleaned by your brother every Wednesday. The verb phrase in this case is will be cleaned. So something is being cleaned, in this case, the kitchen. And who is doing the cleaning? Your brother is. Is your brother the subject of the sentence? No, the kitchen is the subject of the sentence. And so since it isn't the kitchen that's doing the cleaning, so we must then conclude that this has to be written in passive voice. And how about the last one? The mischievous puppy ate 3 socks in one day. Well, the verb is ate. So the question is who ate it? Who ate the sock? Well, the puppy did. And in this sentence, the puppy is the subject. Therefore, the sentence uses active voice, since it is the subject that is performing the action. When you use active voice, your writing is often more direct, more clear. And when you use passive voice, think about these sentences. I was told by the contractors that the renovations are moving ahead of schedule. And the next, the contractors told me that the renovations are moving ahead of schedule. Both examples express basically the same idea, but the sentence in active voice communicates its meaning in a much more direct way. To turn a passive sentence into an active sentence, make sure that the action is being performed by the subject. Sometimes this information is already included in the sentence. Other times, you need to supply the new subject. Here are a few examples. The runaway girls were found by the police this morning. That's passive voice. As opposed to the police found the runaway girls this morning. During the meeting, the agenda was discussed. Passive voice. The agenda was discussed during the meeting. Active. When a sentence is in passive voice, the subject is receiving an action rather than doing the action, as we saw in so many of our examples. Here's an example, additional example here to consider. The former soybean farm was turned into a housing development by the Turner Group. In this example, the subject, farm, is not doing anything. Something else, the Turner Group, is doing the action to the subject. Sentences in passive voice contain the correct form of the helping verb, to be, in addition to a past participle. In the previous example, the one we just read, was is the helping verb, and turned is the past participle, was turned. In your writing, passive voice can sound both wordy and vague. Consider this example. The agreement will be signed by Casey after reviewing the terms with her lawyer. This sentence is confusing. A simpler and a clearer version would sound something like this. Casey will sign the agreement after reviewing the terms with her lawyer. And passive voice can also confuse your audience when the person or object doing the action is not named in the sentence. Here are two examples. A ball was thrown through Mr. Wilson's window. Okay, but who threw the ball? I mean, we can probably safely assume that it was Dennis the Menace, but you know what can happen when you assume, right? So here's the next one. It has been mentioned that more training is needed. It has been mentioned, but who mentioned it? The following sentences are written in passive voice. See if you can rewrite them or at least just restate them so that they're in active voice. I'll show one at a time, followed by the active voice form. Here's our first passive voice sentence. The entire yard was raked by Sarah. What would the active form of that be? Sarah raked the entire yard. Here's our next one. The video was posted on Facebook by an anonymous source. And the active form? An anonymous source posted the video on Facebook. Here's our third. Instructions will be read to you by the teaching assistant. In the active, the teaching assistant will read to you the instructions. How about our last one? The book was written by a best-selling author. Yeah, a best-selling author wrote the book. While active voice is usually a better choice for your writing, there are occasions when passive voice is a better choice. First, you may want to keep the emphasis of the sentence on a word other than the subject. Consider these examples. Baby Sophia was delivered at 3:30 a.m. yesterday, as opposed to Dr. Susan Jones delivered baby Sophia at 3:30 a.m. yesterday. Now, the first choice would be a much better choice for a birth announcement sent to family and friends because they're much more interested in the baby than they are in the doctor. In contrast, maybe a hospital report is more likely to focus on Dr. Jones. Another reason to use passive voice is to keep the meaning of the sentence purposefully vague. We see this in politics all the time and sometimes in business. Here's an example. Due to employee oversight, your recent insurance claim was unable to be processed. This example purposefully uses vague language to make the insurance company sound less responsible for the oversight. It's I refer to it as BS, and probably so do you. Think about what the active version of this sentence might sound like. An employee overlooked your recent insurance claim. Wouldn't you like to hear that once in a while? Just give me the truth. One final reason to use passive voice would be to add sentence variety to a text. Too many active sentences in a row can sound choppy. Adding a few passive sentences will help you keep your writing a little smoother. Here's an example. We will assign a project to each team. We will schedule and monitor these projects. Both of those are written in active voice, as opposed to the next. We will assign a project to each team. These projects will be scheduled and monitored. In the second example, one sentence is active and the next one's passive. Not only does the passive sentence add variety to the text, but it also helps the reader make a connection between the two. In this lesson, we learned how to use both active and passive voice in our writing. And as usual, thanks for listening.